It's a dark time. It is a moment where we are really discovering just how experimental the American experiment really is. We have an unaccountable federal police force killing Americans in the street. The foremost historian of the American political situation, Heather Cox Richardson, is bursting into tears on her own show. It's a tough time. And so I want to meditate here on something larger than us, our place in the universe, and the way in which the scale of the universe happens to help us understand just how tiny, infinitesimally tiny, our place really is, and as a result, why it's so important to stop fucking around and take care of each other. I'm Jake Ward, and this is The Rip Current. We look at the big invisible forces shaping us. And of course, the biggest is the universe and the forces inside it. We are a tiny speck on a tiny speck in the place, at the scale of the universe. And I want to share a couple stories here that, for me, really have helped me sort of see our place here. And as a result, I like to think, value it. Back in 1964, there was a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Kardashev. And he was working at the big university in Moscow, looking into the stars, looking into space. And he one day detected a regular rhythm, a signal from very deep in space that was clearly coming through in a regular pattern, a kind of bop sound that, of course, to Kardashev's ears and to anybody at that time, had to mean aliens, because it had to be a mechanical device creating this extremely repetitive and measurably consistent sound, right? So in the end, what it turned out was he had spotted a pulsar, this revolving energy field in space, and its revolutions, the orbit, not the orbit, but the revolutions that it gives off, right? The spinning that it does is what gives it this very consistent mechanical seeming output. It's a naturally occurring thing, though. And so he was very disappointed, and however was so transfixed by the idea of the possibility of there being people, other beings else in space, that he became absolutely focused and obsessed on that. And so there is a whole theoretical construct that is named for him, that he came up with, that is a way of measuring the sophistication of a civilization. So level 1 on the Kardashev scale is a civilization that has harnessed the power, the available power of its own planet. In our case, right, the wind and the waves and all of that. And a level 2 on the Kardashev scale is a civilization that has harnessed the power of its sun, its nearest star. And a level 3 would have harnessed the power of its galaxy, multiple stars. Multiple planets and stars beyond. So the crazy thing about it, of course, is that we as a species are not even a 1, right? We are like, I think the estimate is like we're like a 0.4 or something like that on the Kardashev scale. And it's a wonderful way of recognizing just how, primitive we are. There's a tremendous comedian on TikTok named Vinnie Thomas who does this hilarious bit about basically humanity being interviewed by some sort of interstellar HR person as to admission into the sort of larger club of civilizations. And he's asking these questions and trying to be so nice, but we're clearly bombing this interview. And he says at one point, he's like, so, and have you colonized any other worlds? And then we say no. No? Well, what about Mars? It's right down the street. And that concept, carrying that concept a little further, we have always, as a civilization, been focused. There have been many people like Kardashev who've been very, very fixated on this question of, are there other are there aliens out there? Are there other civilizations, right, that might be happening with us? And there's a famous thing where Enrico Fermi, when he wasn't building the nuclear weapons, he, as part of the Manhattan Project, he famously would meet with a group of his peers at the national labs where he was working, sit with them at lunch, and they would talk about nerdy stuff. And one of the things that he came back to a lot was this question of, there's so much space and there's so many stars, the math just doesn't seem right that we would be alone. And his famous question was, where is everybody? And that paradox, the Fermi's paradox, has been kicked around for a long time. There are books that propose all sorts of solutions to it. But the one that I have always found most compelling is one that came out of, I think, the University of Amsterdam. It was a Dutch research team proposed their concept, which was, it is not that we are alone. It's because, sure, even across the vastness of the universe, and it's so vast we can't even begin to think about how vast it is, right? Even if we were to agree that across the vastness of the universe, there must be a couple of other civilizations out there, fine. But what these researchers point out is, that doesn't mean that it's happening at the same time that we are. Because in the grand scheme of things, the universe is not only very, very, very large, perhaps infinitely large, it is also very, very, very old. And the time scales of the universe are so far beyond our understanding. And we, as a result, are such a tiny moment, a fraction of an instant in the history of the universe. We are like a match flare being struck in the darkness. And we last only as long as that match flare as a civilization. And so the concept that two matches would just happen to be lit at the same moment, such that they would see each other's light in all that vastness, is ridiculous. And I love that idea, because I think that's probably right. So here's how alone we are, how far away we are from anything like being able to be on another planet. So when the Kepler program went into space and the Kepler telescope went into space, they were, of course, doing many, many experiments, but one of the things that they were looking for were exoplanets. And an exoplanet is a planet that is in the same ratio of its size and its distance to its star, its nearest star, that it has the right ratio of those two things to conceivably have a breathable atmosphere, i.e., conceivably be a planet that we could walk around on and perhaps breathe on. Because there's nothing like that in our neighborhood, right? Mars, you're dead you're dead basically, as soon as you stop holding your breath. You'd have a little fun bounding in the lesser atmosphere, the lesser gravity for a little while, but you're going to be dead real quick. Jupiter, forget it. You both drown and burn in kind of a crazy way. There's so many, we're not going anywhere and setting foot on any of these planets, I would argue, no matter what Elon Musk says. So when the Kepler's mission went out and looked for exoplanets, all it was really doing, because it can't picture them, they're so far away, instead it was measuring the bend of light from its nearest star around that planet and how it comes to us. And by measuring the bending of that light, they could tell how far it was from the source of the light and how big it was. And that proportion will tell you whether it obeys this golden ratio that would make it a real exoplanet on which we could conceivably live. So the closest exoplanet to us, and this was very exciting when they discovered this, is called Proxima Centauri b. It's a planet in the system that surrounds the Proxima Centauri star. And the speculation is that it really might be a planet we could live on. It has conceivably the building blocks of life. It might have water. It might have plants. I mean, who knows what's on that thing? How amazing is that, right, to imagine? And so the news coverage at the time, and I was a reporter at the time covering this stuff, was, imagine we might go there someday. Isn't that incredible? Well, here's the thing. When you look at how far away it is, it's 4.2 light years away. And that is just down the block, as Vinnie Thomas would put it, in a universal sense, in the sense of space. But unfortunately, that's 200,000, well, here's what it is. That is 4.2 years for light to get there. That means that at the fastest speed that we can get a rocket to travel, once we're up there and once we've pushed it and the whole thing, once we get up to our maximum speed, it's still going to take about 2,000 human generations to get there. That's 200,000 years to get there. So that means that you are building a ship somehow, and there's a group of people at NASA who actually think about this thing, the idea of a generation ship where people would be born and live their lives, serve out their duty, and then die all on that ship, and the next generation and the next generation until finally the thing arrives. There's science fiction books about this. I have a sort of screenplay about this concept that I was kicking around for a while. 200,000 generations, 200,000 years, 2,000 human generations. And here's the thing to think about in that sense. We as modern humans have really only been around for 200,000 years. We're only about 2,000 generations into human civilization as we know it at all, which means that we would essentially be bottling up the entirety of human history, jamming it into a tube and sending it off to this unknown planet. You guys, we're not doing that. We're not going to go do that. We are on the generation ship we get. This is it. Planet Earth. And this, there's this famous feeling that grips astronauts when they go into space, in which they are just suddenly have this euphoric epiphany of just recognizing the size and the mutuality of the universe, and what they keep coming back and saying is the specialness of life on Earth, how incredibly special we are in this delicate little vessel that we get to be on. And so when I think about how much we are lying to each other and being angry at one another at the behest of companies who make money off of that, and killing people for objecting to a political situation, taking people from safety to harm to score points, and all of these sins that we are committing right now, in the face of the vastness of the universe and how fragile we are in our tiny little speck of a place we get to live on, this match flare that we get to live during, we should be doing so much better with ourselves and with each other than we are right now. And so when I think about how scary the moment can be, because of how uncertain it all can feel, I try on the one hand to take some comfort from the idea that of just how small these problems actually are. And then I also try to come back to this idea that, like, if we can better understand how big the universe is and how tiny and temporary we are, maybe we'd do a little better job of taking care of one another for this brief time we get to be here.
The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.